start, but before we begin, let's just take a moment to have some brief introductions. People could just share their name and their affiliation. We just want to get to know who you are and who's in the room. So starting from this end.
My name is Antoine Bryant. I am in Houston, Texas, architect and planner.
I'm Brian Cook from Grand Rapids, Director of AE.
Kimberly Dowdell, an architect in New York.
Dejana Chicago, thesis semester at Cornell.
Vicky Strong, architect from Virginia. Terry Canada, architect in North Carolina.
Siobhan Charlotte, I'm an architect in Montgomery, Alabama.
Richie Madison, architect and planner in Chicago.
Tim Johnson, architect in the city of Orlando.
Nancy Gilmore, architect, project manager, Houston, Texas.
Michelle Higo, Senate, fifth year architecture student at Philadelphia University.
Amina Wright, St. Louis Development. I'm sorry, St. Louis Commercial Development.
Farhana Becker, Chicago. I am an architectural consultant.
My name is Alec Denodio. I'm a student at UC Berkeley, fourth year, studying landscape architecture.
I'm Mika. I'm also a landscape architect student at UC Berkeley.
Andrew Thompson, architect, New Jersey.
Excellent. Thank you all. Appreciate that. Yes?
Catherine Brickmore, architect, Alexandria, Virginia.
Okay. One thing to bring to your attention, all observations in this discussion are going to be constructive observations. So I don't want you to hold back. I want you to just freely share and express and offer your thoughts in terms of the issues that we're going to talk about today, but all observations are constructive observations for this conversation. I realize it's important to start out with a definition in order to ground the conversation, because sometimes you can talk about issues like social equity and people may feel it's nebulous and it's all over the place. So I just wanted to offer that definition briefly because we really are talking about social equity. I know equity is also a financial term, but that's not what we're talking about today. Social equity means encouraging community parity and sustainable settlements through access to health, education, employment resources and services for underserved populations and vulnerable groups. I often write on the topic of equitable development, and so in the process of having prepared reports and articles for Plan Edison and other resources of that nature, I always try to ground the conversation that way. We have a clear sense in terms of what we are trying to have a discussion about. And so I'm going to transition to question number one. As I indicated before, I'm a planner by training. This is an architect's conference. As a planner, we do have a code of ethics. Social equity is one of a principle of our code of ethics was actually incorporated around 1981. So I'm actually asking this question as one who is not an architect, who is not familiar with the values of architects, but it's the warm-up question in order to start this conversation, which is simply, as an architect, is encouraging equity important? And if so, why? And inquiring minds really want to know. I mean, this is a conversation that we're having in Indianapolis, but again, you have peers in other countries, South America, Africa, Asia, who probably haven't had the opportunity to speak with their counterparts here in the United States who may be professionals. And so we really want to know, is equity important from your orientation as an architect, and if so, why?
Are you asking that question now?
Yes.
Oh.
I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
And the reason why is because, I mean, as architects, we shape our environment. And one example that comes to mind immediately is that recently the press sort of had there's a big issue in the press about a developer in New York who is building a building that has two separate entrances. One is one of the entrances is for the ultra wealthy. It's a condominium building, and then the other entrance is for, I guess, to get some certain tax breaks. They had a affordable housing component, and so this building now has two entrances. One with like views over like the Hudson River, and the other one was just like facing the street. And obviously the views go to the people who are paying the big dollars for that building. And so as an architect, I think there's a lot of chatter on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn about, you know, like, what does this mean? And, you know, it's essentially creating, you know, a different experience for those with money and those without. And I think that says a lot. And I think most of us would find that to be kind of a problem, you know, in terms of really differentiating those without money and how that design move actually plays into how people feel about their experience and their place. Okay. So I think that's the reason why it's important.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
To piggyback on that, I agree that yes, it is important because as an architect, having been in the field and also having grown up in a third world country and the Middle East, I've seen the differences between the different housing for each level of the community. So going from you're living in a hut made out of cloth and to going to a house that's got every possible thing you can think of in the world for your ease. But as an architect, it's our responsibility to show that yes, there are things available, there are ways to actually provide housing, which is an essential, just pretty much alongside as getting food for people who need to live in a place, to have a family, to be able to survive. You can't be out in the open. I mean, I've seen people living out in the open, and it's just in the harsh conditions of the environments that are in those countries. It's important for them to actually be able to have something that's able to protect them environmentally, socially, so that it doesn't put hierarchical status for them, because it's gone where in India, Pakistan, we have people, you know, I have a donkey, I live outside, I'm on the dirt road, and my neighbor is living in a $20 million mansion, and he's adding floors to that and marble to that. And it's just that if we can make that little tweak and we can be the ones to spread the word and start working on that, it would be essential that those people might be able to open their eyes and see that, okay, I can make an effort to help the one that's next to me instead of using it all for myself. So it's in the long run, in my opinion, it's helpful.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. We can do well and do good. That's the reason why Shore Bank was founded in Chicago about 25 years ago. They amassed about $2.6 billion when they were in operation by banking the unbanked. So it can be done. Yes.
Well, just as a human being, of course, I think we all have experiences growing up, and we've seen people in different areas grow up in different ways. I personally come from a background where there was a lot of poverty and was able to come up through the system thanks to my mother and family, and get a good education and where I am today. But as architects, I think encouraging equity is very important. At the root of our profession, we are problem solvers, and I think that even if money's not involved, even if there's not a lot of glory in it, I think that just at the root of what we do, we want to solve problems, we want to figure out ways of making things better for everyone. And so when you talk about schools in areas that don't have them, building houses, things like that, to figure out ways of building that infrastructure for villages, for cities, what have you, I think that's just who we are, and it's of course needed. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. We're going to take one more, and then we're going to transition to the second question.
I was just going to say equity is a tool. It's a tool.
It is a tool, yes.
And we have to look at it as a tool. It is, you can't build status and all those other things, but at the end of the day, it's a tool.
Dr. Ferdinand. I'll give you the liberty of being the last question for the night.
If we don't have great architecture, everyone doesn't have great architecture. It's debilitating to the human spirit. And you see that, as you well mentioned, with your homes and with your schools. And when you're growing up in an environment, and these days I think everyone in the world knows when you're in an environment that's less than someone else's, you just never feel the same. You never feel like you're equal, and you're always struggling. I mean, I see that in myself. I see that in my kids, even though they, in a lot of ways, have had a privileged upbringing relative to other people that they know, they don't, and they see that as a hindrance.